How did the first week of practice after the first game go?
I mean, pretty good. You know, when you have a long layoff like that from Tuesday to Sunday, you know, you take we always do anyway. We take an approach of recovery stuff, film stuff, and then finally we get some work done on the court. And the big thing that came out of the week so far is, you know, coming out of there, those first 30 minutes in the first game, it was surprising and not surprising. I mean, that's kind of what you expect, but you don't know that it's going to, that first quarter is going to go exactly the way it did. You know, you don't anticipate that. So when people ask me how was the game on Sunday, I said, you know, we played a great 30 minutes and a pretty lousy 10 minutes or 8 minutes, whatever the case may be. So we tried to address both those things. You know, why were we so good? And then what happened, you know, where we got sloppy defensively. And so it was good. We got a lot done during the week. And we still have a lot to do, without question.
Geno, what are banner-raising ceremonies like for you in that you're celebrating a championship but also kind of putting it to bed and focusing in on the next one?
Yeah. It's like there's a lot of closures, you know. We get back and like we have the parade and go, okay, it's over, and then you know something happens during the summer to remind you. Then you come back to school and we're having, you know, a dinner to give out, you know, championship rings, and you know, you have a game on the road like we just did, and like let's not focus on last year, let's focus on this year. And now this weekend, let's drop a banner and make sure this is it. This is the end of the road. And so you're kind of reminded of quite often that something pretty amazing happened last year. But you're also reminded that that was last year. So for me, it's always good to move on, you know, and not dwell on the past. But it's exciting for our fans. It's exciting for the players that are here, their parents, their friends. You know, this is the first time they've ever gone through this for this group. So, you know, they're experiencing the last 2 years something that maybe we've come to take for granted around here, but for them it's a whole new thing. So.
They do another one in Hartford.
And then we go to Hartford, and you know, this is the final. You know, we're like Downton Abbey. You know, there's going to be an end at some point, and hopefully Hartford next week will be, as my friend Rick Carberry says late at night, final.
Has it felt any different this time around, just sort of going through the ring ceremony, the banners, kind of just having this experience again for the first time after so long?
Quite honestly, for me, it feels a little bit more detached. Like I'm either consciously or subconsciously, I'm separated from it all. I'm almost looking at it from the outside as opposed to being on the inside and you know, experiencing all this. I mean, from the final buzzer on, I've just kind of been like at the parade. You know, I'm just watching everything happen in front of me, kind of getting a kick out of all the reaction of all the people and the players. So, yeah, truly, this one has felt way different than all the rest. You know, for those reasons specifically, I'm just a innocent bystander.
Do you, comparatively, what was it like in late 1995 when you were celebrating it all for the very first
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
play, the first banner?
Yeah, 1995 compared to these days, or you know, the world, was like 1995 was like landing on the moon, you know. Like I said, when we got back and we were going down 91 on our bus and helicopters are following us, and you know, you're all too young to remember this, but you know, and Jamel getting a kick out of it. You know, we're like OJ, you know, they're chasing us down the highway with helicopters, and so you think back to 30 years ago and to today, it's yeah. I think back to those days, and my only thought back in those days was I need to hide. I don't want anybody to see me. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be a part of this. You know, like, this is overwhelming. This is too much for us to handle. You know, as a program, it's too much. To now, I walk around the streets. Hey, there's the guy that coaches UConn. Ah, nice. How are you? I'm good. Thank you. It's just kind of refreshing, to be honest with you.
But the fact that it's 30 years
I know.
that we're talking about is what
I
makes
know.
the story so remarkable.
Yeah. I think that's a big deal. You know, the number 12 is not a big deal for me anyway. The 30-year gap is a big deal. That generally doesn't happen. First of all, people don't do this nonsense for that long. Hard to have that kind of success that far apart, you know? So you don't get many people doing it. Then when you do it, that doesn't mean that you can sustain it for that long, because things happen along the way. And then here we are, you know, 30 years later, still having the same result, the same accomplishment as we did 30 years ago. In a completely different era, completely different world, completely different way of doing it. You know, if I talk to these players about 30 years ago and what happened then, they look at me and they don't know what I'm talking about. If I talk to the players that were on that team 30 years ago and what their experience was relative to what they see these kids' experience is, they just shake their head. So the only thing that you can connect that championship and this championship to are me and CD and Sarah Darris. We're the only three people in this world that we, you know, here, that have any connection to both of those things.
But with all the changes, there's still 4 or 5 things that you guys do that works no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Even the biggest brands, even the biggest things ever tweak. You know, Coke tried to make Coke Zero, right? That went over great. You know, you have something that's great, and you can't sit there and rest on it and go, this will be great forever. And you can't also go and say, well, because times have changed, we have to blow the thing up and build something that is for these times. I never bought into that, you know? What works, works. Will it work the exact same way? No. Can you get the same result? Well, yeah, we did. Was it the exact same way? No. Was it totally different? No. I wouldn't know how to do it totally different. So the things that we did back then that were instrumental in us winning the whole thing, if there was 10 core things that we did, let's just say, we're still doing 7 of them, at least. The other 3, we may be doing them in some way, shape, or form. They just don't look the same, you know? But so many things are still similar, you know? Yeah, there's so many similarities, so many similarities. I was talking to a teacher recently, and they teach like little kids, and they told them one day, like 10 of them, to get in 2 lines. They had no idea what she was talking about. Because nobody takes verbal instructions anymore. I mean, you don't think about it like that, but, you know, now you want to send somebody, you know, you don't call them on the phone and talk to them and tell them. You just type it out and send it to them, and they read it. And so if they read, get in 2 lines. First, you'd have to show them what 2 lines is. So there's a different way that we have to communicate today, which is really weird. But, you know, there's a combination of I'm trying to adapt to that, but I'm also trying to make them appreciate what we have and what we've done and make them adapt to us. You know, this is not a one-way street, their way or my way. I think that those days are over, you know. And I know coaches who they've turned their program over to it's their way. You know, I can't do anything about it, so it's their way. And I know coaches who have tried to stay like it's 1990, and it doesn't work, you know. Yet if you come to one of our practices and you just close your eyes and just listen, you'll think it's 1995. And I'm not saying that in a good way either.
You know, with the title in '95, I think I remember you saying what followed the celebration was a little bit of stress. Like, what if this is the only one? What if we're one
Yeah.
wonder?
Yeah.
What do you remember about setting in?
That's always, I'm sure, at the back of anyone's mind who something great happens. Is it luck? You know, did it just happen because you were in the right place, right time, had the right group of guys? You know, everything fell into place. The moon, the stars, everything was lined up perfectly. And you do, you know, after you celebrate, after you do all that, you start the next season again, and you do go through these angst moments like, I have to do this again to prove it wasn't an accident. And it drives you crazy. You know, it drives you crazy. Now, yeah, completely, yeah. But at the same time, you know, from a coaching standpoint, some people are very fortunate to win one and then get out. Like they stop coaching and they go, see that person, they won a national championship and they rode off into the sunset on their white horse and like, you know, life and liberty and the pursuit of justice. Let's go. And then some people hang around too long and they become, you know, you're over the weekend guests who on Tuesday don't realize it's time to leave, dude. You know, so yeah, back then you're just fighting for one more. Now you're fighting to stay relevant. Stupid.
Do you see any of that angst to get another from your players, or maybe thinking that it should look as perfect as it did in April?
No, I don't see any of that. Maybe they feel it, I don't know, but I don't see any of it. The way I look at it is, when I see angst, I think of the Asia Tamika Sue D 2002 team, who lost in 2001, okay? That angst was in the locker room, was on the plane, it was in pickup, it was on their summer vacation, it was in every weight room, in every drill, it was all over them every minute of every day, and you didn't have to talk about it. Tell me anybody in the world who does that anymore. There's no angst about doing it again, there may be, you know, inside, but I don't see it like, oh my God, you know, we pay more attention to detail. We're more desperate. No, it's the same. It's the same. And I don't know whether that's good or bad. I really don't. You know, I don't know whether the angst is good. Like, oh my God, you know, I'm so desperate to do it again. You know? What if you're not good enough to do it again? What if everything doesn't break right? So there's fear. Like today, everybody lives in a world of fear. Like, what if I can't do it again? What if I can't be successful? You know, so it's completely different. Back then, they lost, they were pissed. They won, they were like, you know, like take back 2013. They won, I'm winning 3 more. And we go about it that way. Business. Like steamrolling everybody. Times have changed, man. Times have changed. And there's a lot more fear in the world today. Fear of losing is taking over the tremendous desire for success.
How do you manage
It's impossible. It's impossible because that fear of losing starts with me. Because, you don't let them see it. But we all carry it around, right? I mean, for those 8 years, 9 years after 2016, there was this like burning desire without showing it, without being ridiculous about it, but burning fire inside. Like we need to win again to prove that, because all the people were writing us off, right? So we need to win again. We need to win. We need to win. We need to win. And that was always tempered with, what if it's not meant to be, right? So that's now. For me, I don't care. I mean, but I don't want them to feel the fear of losing, even though it's there, because now they're going to be judged differently. I told them in the locker room after the Louisville game, I said, I guarantee you, a majority of the people are going to talk about the fourth quarter. Like, how can you let this happen? You guys sucked. Yeah, we did. You didn't look like this team will not win a national championship based on that fourth quarter. I know. But do you want to bet me that we won't play 150 fourth quarters like that this year? So there's this, we have to look like we did in Tampa. And you don't look like that right now. So you're not as good as you were. And now the players feel like, oh, well, even though we got up 28, we should have won by 40. We only won by 13, 14, whatever the heck the number was. That's not good enough for Connecticut. And I don't want them sitting in the locker room after a really good win in game one against a really good team, moping that we didn't win the Connecticut way or win by the way people expect us to win. That, to me, is the biggest fear, danger that I see, is to having to be better than really good. I remember this was happening when Stewie was here, and after the third straight national championship, I remember people were asking me, so where you go from here? Like, I don't know. I mean, we've won 100 and some in a row, and we won a national championship 3 years in a row. But, I'm going to spend the whole summer at the shore just locked in my room trying to figure out a way to get better. Like, how? But that's the expectation, right? That's the expectation.
Takes the joy out of the journey.
Well, yeah, I'm the worst one to be saying this, but that old adage that perfection is the thief of, happiness and joy, then when you're trying to be the perfect player, be the perfect team, play the perfect game, even though, I strive for that, I'm striving for something that I'm not. I'm none of those things, but I'm striving for those things for them, and we all are every day, but trying to think that we can be that every day, every game, every possession, every quarter, that just makes for a miserable season. And I don't want that for them.
Did you notice they came back from that first game a little more relaxed or without those jitters?
I think they came, you mean come back home after that first game? During the film session that we were watching, they were pretty locked in. There was a real seriousness about it. Because no matter what you think that's happening during the game, once you see it on film, it's like, whoa. Usually you can say in the game, he's overreacting. Look at him. He makes a big deal out of nothing. Then when you sit there and you watch it on film, and I go, you try to make it personal and you try to appeal to their pride. And there was like a locked-in nodding of the heads, like, yeah, that's not good. That's not who we are, So you tried to show them the first three quarters and go, and you can see the look in their eyes, like, wow, like that's pretty good for game one. And then, they see the other part and go, yeah, there's always two sides, So the object for us as coaches, going to practice and make our break, our transition game even better than it was. Make our, cuts to the basket even better than they were, because they were great. Make our, movement without the ball even better than it was. Make our defense intensity even better than it was. And then little by little chip away at those things that happened in the fourth quarter. And we talked about this too, that idea that every time you win, right, everyone that you play against is learning how to beat you. And every time you lose, you're leaving, clues for the other teams that watch you on film on how to beat you. So, but at the same time, every time we win, we're reminding ourselves this is why we're really good. And every time we don't play well, we remind ourselves this is what can happen when we, and this also will happen as just part of the game. 4 for 26. If you'd have told me you're going to be up 28 against Louisville and you're going to be 4 for 26, I would say, huh? I told Walls after the game, I said, if you'd have told me before this game that you were going to make more threes than us, I would say you had 16, we have 14. I never would have thought we have 4. But that happens, and you got to be willing. You got to be willing and able to find a way to win games when one of your biggest strengths isn't there. And I think that's something to be proud of. Actually, it's not something to be, moaning about. Now, if we took a bunch of lousy threes, we didn't get a good look at the basket a bunch of times. We forced shots. We turned the ball over 8 times. We played a really, really good game. And if we didn't do all that stuff, then that's a bigger worry. So, tomorrow, we have a game tomorrow, so we can stop talking about the past. But we have a game tomorrow, and tomorrow, it'll be interesting to see tomorrow how I can do a better job with our rotation, how I can limit some people's minutes, hopefully, and how I can increase some other people's minutes. Who that is, I don't know yet. How that will look, I don't know yet. Tomorrow's rotation might be completely different than Tuesday's. And next Wednesday's may be completely different than tomorrow. So I don't want us to get too comfortable. So tomorrow's just another opportunity to try to find, which combinations do what. There were times on the floor the other day, we had KK and Heckle in the game at the same time, and it looked pretty good, There were times when we looked really small, and we looked pretty good. There were times when we were a little bit bigger, and we looked pretty good. So how do we keep coming up with new ways to play? New ways to play. But okay.
Is Blanca going to be available?
No.
Be in that
Well, she's practicing, but no contact yet. So yesterday was her first workout, no contact. We'll see what she does today, but I'm not counting on her for tomorrow. But miracles do happen, but I'm not counting on it. So, no. No updates on Morgan Shelley. Gandhi practiced yesterday and the day before. Actually, she did some workout. So she's more in the picture. Everybody else, status quo. All good to go.
Did Morgan have a setback along the way? Is the recovery just taking a long time?
Morgan had a lot of piddly stuff that was a result of things that happened in high school, things that happened here, didn't go according to plan. There was always another but along the way. So I think we're getting close to being on the right track. Just I can't give you the exact date.
Obviously, Florida State looks a lot different about Tanaya Watson, but just what have you seen so far with their first 2 games?
Well, that's the other thing this early in the season when you play, and in the world that we live in, it used to be, here's who they have coming back. Now you have to go check the other teams' rosters, and who did they lose? Oh, and they're at Florida State now, or whatever school it may be. So you don't even know what kind of team you're going to have. Same with Louisville, when we played them. They'll be the same kind of team with different personnel. They'll want to play fast, they want to shoot a lot of threes. They'll want to pressure you on defense. I think, Brooke, when you have a style of play, you're going to try to play that way as many times as you can, even though the personnel might be different names, different faces, but they're going to try to accomplish the same thing. They're going to want to make it a fast up and down game, which, so do we. So it'll be interesting.